So we are now done with our ancient Greeks and we are moving on to our next civilization, and it's going to be the story of Macedonia. A lot of people think we jump straight into Rome after the Greeks, but not quite. There is, of course, another civilization of Macedonia, and I'm going to kind of talk a little bit. There's going to be a whole lecture just on Macedonia. We'll just cover it in one lecture, and then after that, we'll move on to the Romans. So here we go. Here's just our map of where we're going to start from. So the first person you want to know, then I'll give you all the other keywords in a second, is Macedonia is this area you could see. It's not this whole colored area. I'll explain what all these colors are as we go through it. For now, all you need to know is Macedon or Macedonia is right here just north of Greece, right? So it's that area you can see on the western side here on this map, on the northwest, right over here, that is Macedonia. The first king that you need to know, the first person you need to know about Macedonia is this man named Philip II, who was king of Macedonia around the year 350 BC. So if you remember when we left off, 350 BC, I said by then Thebes had defeated Sparta. Thebes was getting stronger. But they kind of got weakened fighting Sparta, and so this whole area was vulnerable. And who is it vulnerable to? Well, this new force, and it's going to be King Philip II of Macedonia. He's fairly young when he becomes the king. He's fairly ambitious. And Philip II, and one of the things we know about Macedonia, the first thing I want you to know, so we're going to start with Philip. There's going to be two rulers of Macedonia you need to know, Philip and then his son, which we'll get to. And then you basically, in terms of the objectives, just kind of know what they both do, what they accomplish, and the impacts of the Macedonian kingdom. So that's essentially what I want you to get out of this lecture. So Philip II, he decides he wants to have more influence in Greece. And he had lots of money, lots of gold. And so what he does is he takes this gold and he funnels it into the Greek world. And a lot of the people in the Greek world are like, hey, we love Philip. Who doesn't like getting money, right? And so a lot of people in the Greek world are loving all this money Philip is giving them, but there were some people who were like, can't trust this guy. There's some string attached, right? Why is he giving us all this money? Why? And when I say giving money, if he wants a writer, if he wants an artist, if he wants a sculptor, he'll just pay them a lot of money, come up to the area of Macedonia and do the work up there. Some people are like, yay, we like Philip. Other people are kind of a little, cynical, a little bit worried about what he was planning, not too trustworthy of Philip, but there was kind of a little bit of both. So anyways, he's doing this from about the year 350 to about the year 340 BC. For about 10 years, he's basically wining and dining them. And then around the year 340 BC, Philip goes to the Greek city-states, who remember have been through quite a bit since the Persian War, and he tells them, hey guys, why don't you guys just be part of the kingdom of Macedonia? Let's just all be one kingdom. And after 10 years of wining and dining, some of the Greek city-states say yes, but some say no. Two specifically say no, and that was Athens and Sparta. Both Athens and Sparta said, no, we're not interested. We don't want to be part of this, alliance with you. I'm sorry, did I say Athens and Sparta? My apologies. Athens and Thebes. Let me correct that. So it was Athens and Thebes. So Athens and Thebes actually said, no, we don't want to be part of this. And what happens is, of course, Philip takes his big strong army, which he also had, and crushes Athens and Thebes, right? So there's this battle called the Battle of Chaeronea, and he basically crushes these two powers, Athens and Thebes. After that battle, it's safe to say no one else challenges him, and he's able to control the Greek world. But he's not quite done. So that was around the year 340 BC. He's not done. He looks at the area of the map. He knows the Persian world is vulnerable as well. So he decides, oh, let's go after Persia, right? And maybe I can conquer Asia Minor. So he actually plans a few years later to invade Asia Minor. Organizes a big force, organizes a big fleet. He's ready to invade Asia Minor. And just before he's ready to launch the invasion, he dies. Probably killed. He actually is killed. How he's killed, why he's killed, not sure, but he's killed. So his plans just go out the window, and you go, all right, well, that's the story of Macedonia. That's a really short lecture. Well, not quite, because while Philip II is now dead, he did have a son. There was another, and the son of Philip II is going to be the really key person in our story, because his son is the very famous Alexander. So here he is, Alexander the Great. We're going to spend a little bit of time on him, obviously. He is the key figure in the story of Macedonia. He's only about 18 years old when he becomes the king. So kind of keep that point in mind. He's very young. And he is very ambitious. He has ambitions that go beyond being ruler of Macedonia, beyond ruler of Greece, beyond ruler of Asia Minor, beyond ruler of Persia. He wanted to rule the entire world. And what he thought of the world at the time, he came pretty close. He didn't quite have an idea of how big the world was, but this is his goal, this is his ambition. So we're going to spend a bit of time here on Alexander. So here are the kind of rest of the key words you're going to need on the story of Alexander. Make sure you get them all down, right? So I'll give you a second to get all those words down. Of course, you can always pause it, and we'll go from there. Our primary source on Alexander is this first one there, a man named Arrian, right? Arrian writes what we call the campaigns of Alexander. Actually, he's not technically a primary source, to be more precise, Arrian. Arrian uses primary sources to compile a really good history of Alexander. So he comes a little bit later. Penguin, again, makes a really good version of his story of Alexander the Great. Book right in front of me, but it's kind of similar to that Penguin style. It's it's a little thinner than this guy that I showed you before in Thucydides. All right, so anyway, so let's start talking about what Alexander's going to do, and what's his history, his background, and his stories. And we'll start by just kind of putting up our map and going from there. So here's our map again of the Kingdom of Macedonia. You can see it a little bit more close up here. So again, here's Macedon. So let's start with the basic story of Alexander, and we'll start with his childhood. One of the names there was Aristotle, and Aristotle was the tutor of Alexander. So when Alexander was a little kid, he got the best of everything, including this great tutor, Aristotle. Aristotle taught him everything, right? He taught him about math and science and literature, and little Alexander was smart, picked up on everything really well. But Aristotle also tried to teach Alexander this idea of moderation, nothing in excess. That particular lesson went in one ear and out the other, because as we're about to see, Alexander does nothing in moderation. Everything he does is big, is huge, is dramatic. That is just how Alexander lives his life. So he's about 18 years old. He inherits the throne. His dad had died. And immediately there's challenges, right? And not a surprise. Thebes down here decides, you know what? We don't want to be under the control of Alexander, and they think, well, this is a good time to strike. He's young, he's inexperienced, there's transition of power. If we're going to break away from Macedonia, this is the time to do it. So Thebes rebels. What happens? Well, I grabbed my book on by Arrian, and so I'm going to read to you just a short little couple sentences here of what happens when Thebes tries to rebel. The Allied troops who took part in the fighting were entrusted by Alexander with the final settlement of the fate of Thebes. They decided to raze the city itself to the ground. All its territory, but the places hallowed by religious association, was to be divided among the allies. The women, the children, and all the men who survived were to be sold into slavery, the only exception being priests or priestesses and had either personal ties with Alexander or Philip or official connections with Macedon. So basically, Thebes rebels and Alexander levels the city, right? This is what I mean by nothing with moderation. So he gets all that done, and then he really begins his massive campaign. And, I'm going to give you some dates here, and you don't need to memorize any of these dates, but I do want to show you how quickly Alexander is going to go on this campaign. It's going to go, he moves incredibly fast when he begins his conflict. So he's going to start his first kind of campaign outside the Greek world is going to begin, let me get you the exact here, 334. Yeah, 334. So in the year 334 BC, he's going to start his campaign, right? 334 BC. Again, you don't need to memorize the exact date or anything. I have to look it up there. But I want to show you how quickly he moves. And he's going to organize a massive force. He's going to take military. He's going to take tens of thousands of men. He's going to take navy. But he's also going to take with him writers, historians, artists, all these guys as well, because he wants to document what he's about to do, because in his mind, he's going to conquer the world. And you can see on this map here kind of the course he's going to take. So he moves from Greece, he goes into Asia Minor. In 2 years, from 334 to 332, in a 2-year period, this is what he's going to do. He's going to move into Asia Minor. He's going to fight a war in Asia Minor against the Persian emperor at the time, Darius the Third. Okay, so we got Darius the Third. He's the Persian emperor at the time, and he is going to have a battle against him, and he's going to defeat the Persian emperor Darius the Third here in Asia Minor. We have actually a really cool mosaic of this, so let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the mosaic of Alexander at war. And what I really want you to see here is Darius the Third. Don't mix him up with the other Darius. And this is Alexander. And what's important is Alexander is right there in the front of the fighting. He's not one of these generals who leads from behind. He tells his men, hey, go, you go ahead and I'll sit back and get the glory. He doesn't do that. He's ahead. And he leads the fighting. And this is kind of, it's always kind of enjoy when I'm lecturing in class. This is always a fun week for me because the same time I'm lecturing on Alexander for the History 110 class, in my modern Western Civ class, History 111, I'm lecturing on Napoleon. And when I teach my Middle East class, I'm lecturing on Genghis Khan. And one time I was lecturing all three of them on the same day. And it was just kind of crazy kind of comparing them. But these three, can you imagine these three in a dinner party together? But these three men, they're all very aggressive. And that's one of the keys that they did all share. None of them are like from behind leading. Napoleon, Alexander, Genghis, they're always leading the fighting. So anyways, Alexander in this mosaic, you could see this. He's leading the fighting at this battle against Darius in Asia Minor. So he does that very successfully. All right, back to our map. And as he moves down, he finishes in Asia Minor. This is still in the same 2-year period. He then moves south, right? He conquers this entire area of what is modern-day Israel Levant. And still in the same 2-year period, right, from 334 to 332, he moves further south and conquers all the area of Egypt. So all of that territory is going to be conquered in 2 years. Now, before we're done, when he's done with Egypt, he's going to, first of all, get a new title, right? He gets a new title, Pharaoh. He's ruler of Egypt, which makes him a god. Now remember, by now he's only about, 21, 22 years old roughly. He is ruler of Macedonia, ruler of Greece, defeated Asia Minor, defeated the Persian emperor. By the way, Darius was not killed in that battle. Darius escaped in that battle in Asia Minor. That'll be important a little bit. Conquers the area of the modern day area of Syria, Israel, that whole Levant region, and all the way down to Egypt, and he's considered a god. So you got to start thinking, what is this going to start to do to Alexander? It's really going to start giving him a pretty big head. He's really going to start thinking, there's anything I want, I could do. He's probably going to start to feel basically like he's immortal. I mean, think about it today. When people are young, they generally don't worry about death as much. It's just human nature. And when people are young, they don't always think as clearly. No one ever in their life looked back and goes, man, I was wiser when I was younger. It's just not how we function as human beings, right? And it's true of pretty much every single individual. There's very few exceptions. And so Alexander, he's rich, he's powerful, he's wealthy, and he can just feel he could do whatever he wants. And this is going to be seen as he continues on. One more thing, before he leaves Egypt, he establishes a new city called Alexandria. There are going to be actually several new cities he's going to establish, 21 of them. They're all going to be called Alexandria. When you talk about the Alexandria, it's a little small there, but it's the Alexandria in Egypt, and he conquers that city. He creates that city, founds it. This is the most famous of the Alexandrias. And again, nothing in moderation. It's going to be a massive city. It's going to have a population of about 1 million people. It's going to be, for a while, the center of all knowledge in Western civilization, because there's going to be a library that is going to be built there called the Lost Library of Alexandria, because it's not there anymore. But at the time in ancient history, it had 750,000 volumes of work in it. So, pretty cool, right? So you have that story of Alexander in Alexandria. All right, so he's done with that. That's 2 years. So that's from about 334 to 332. Then we move on for 2 more years, from 332 to 330, he conquers more land, specifically everything you see in orange here, the entire area of Mesopotamia. So all of that is conquered as well in a 2-year period. One of the things I want you to think about is, how he's doing this. He's got to march through weather, through terrain, through heat, through cold, and this is grueling, right? I don't know if any of you go hiking, but you go on a 5, 6, 7, 8 mile hike and you feel pretty worn at the end. These guys are going about 20 to 25 miles a day to go on this pace, and in between they're fighting battles. So this is pretty intense stuff. So it's not a surprise that it gets to a point where some of Alexander's men get a little bit tired, they get a little wary, and they start to mumble and grumble a bit. And Arian, our primary source here, again, here's Arian again, I grabbed it for you guys to see. He tells us what Alexander does. When he hears his men mumbling and grumbling, Alexander calls his men together, and he does something else that he does really well. He gives them a speech. He talks to them. So what does he tell them? Well, this is the speech to his men. He says the following, and again, remember, this is after they've been fighting for a number of years, but they're pretty tired. So these are the words that we have that Alexander tells his men. He says the following. I could not have blamed you for being the first to lose heart if I, your commander, had not shared in your exhausting marches and your perilous campaigns. It would have been natural enough if you had done all the work merely for others to reap the rewards, but it is not so. You and I, gentlemen, have shared the labors and shared the dangers, and the rewards belong to all of us. The conquered territory belongs to you. It is from your ranks that the governors are chosen. Already the greater part of the treasure passes through your hands, and when all of Asia is overrun, then indeed I will go further than the mere satisfactions of your ambitions. The utmost hopes of riches and power which each one of you cherishes will be by far surpassed. If you still wish to return home, you may. I will not stand in your way, but I will make those who stay the envy of those who return. So there it is. There's that very dramatic speech that Alexander gives his men. And after a speech like that, his men say, yeah, let's keep going. So where do they keep going to? Well, all the way to India. So they keep going another 4 years, and they get all the way to India. Pretty dramatic stuff that you see there. So he's doing unbelievable amount of territory. Now, what Alexander doesn't understand is there's this little chunk of land over here still in the east called China, and he doesn't quite get how big things are. So at this point, his men are like, yeah, we're kind of done. We're going back home, and there was no speech that could keep him going. Oh, one of the things he gave him is a lot of opium. Opium because that was kind of the drug of choice to keep people, going through pain. So he's like, all right, well, we'll go back home and we'll go from there. And so he starts to return back home. So let me talk about the journey back. So as he starts to go back home, he's going to stop in a couple of places and a couple things I want you to know as he returns home. All right. So again, he's pretty young. He's only about 30 years of age when he begins his return home. As he goes back home, he's going to stop at a couple places. The first place I want you to know is he stops at a city called Susa, kind of right in the middle. And there in Susa, it was around the year 324 BC, circa 324. Again, you don't even memorize the exact dates. For all of this, you just remember circa 330 BC, you're good, right? That's all you need. And so Susa, and there in Susa, Alexander decides to do something to bond this massive civilization that he has now conquered from the Eastern world to the Western world. And no one has really done this. And he does this by doing a marriage. And remember Darius? I said Darius III was still alive. So what he does is he goes to the Darius and he tells Darius, I'm going to marry your daughter Statira. And so Darius marries Statira, and Alexander marries Statira. And he does this, and the idea behind doing this, of marrying Statira, is to bond the two civilizations. But remember, I said Alexander does nothing in moderation. At the same marriage ceremony at Susa, we call this the marriage at Susa, not only is Alexander going to marry Statira, he's going to take 80 of his top officers, find 80 prominent Persian women, and they're going to get married at that ceremony as well. So really nothing small. And then he takes, ready for this, 10,000 of his regular foot soldiers, finds 10,000 Persian women, and they get married at Susa as well. So obviously this is just, this massive marriage ceremony, nothing in moderation. The idea is to try to bond these two cultures together. So that's the marriage at Susa. All right, so then what? He does that. We move one more year further. We get to the year 323 BC. Alexander's still going home, and then he stops in Babylon. He stops in Babylon. He's 32 years of age, right? He gets to the city of Babylon. And here, guys, I'd love to tell you some big dramatic thing happens, but unfortunately, the story of Alexander is not as dramatic at this point because simply what happens, he's sitting there in Babylon and he dies. That's it. When I tell the story of Napoleon's story is like a crazy roller coaster ride. I spent, I don't know, like 3-4 times the amount of time lecturing on Napoleon as I do on Alexander because it's such a roller coaster ride. Alexander's just like a rocket, explodes. That's it. And he just dies. He dies of maybe drinking too much, nothing in moderation, maybe an illness, but he's dead. So the question is, what does all this mean now? He just created this massive empire in the blink of an eye. What happens when he dies? Well, when Alexander dies, his massive empire, so this is kind of the legacy of Alexander, is going to collapse. What does it collapse into? Collapses into this. And you don't need to know all of these. It's really small. You don't need to worry about it. I just put the Ptolemy control of Egypt as the only one you need to know. Basically, all these different colors represent different kingdoms that are carved out of Alexander's empire. And here in Egypt, you have the Ptolemy family. If you remember, the Rosetta Stone was created by the Ptolemy, the Greeks. That's how the Greeks control Egypt. And so Alexander, in terms of a legacy, is not able to create a united empire. However, what Alexander did, his legacy is still important because what Alexander will do is basically officially end the Hellenic world, the Greek world that we've been talking about, and replace it with what we call the Hellenistic world. What's the difference? So a few things. Number one, in the Hellenic world, politically, everything revolved around the city-state, right? We had city-state, city-state, city-state. Now that we're in the Hellenistic world, you're not going to survive as a city-state anymore. If you're going to survive, you need to be part of a kingdom. May not be, or an empire, right? You're not going to be part of a tiny little city-state like Athens or Sparta and expect to survive very long. So that's one difference. In the Hellenic world, the city-state was dominant, and as we move into the Hellenistic world, the 300s, and we move forward, you're going to need to be part of a kingdom. Second kind of characteristic of the Hellenistic world is that you have a lot more mobile movement. You're going to have Buddhist monks in Greece during the Hellenistic world because there's so much movement from the Eastern world to the Western world. So you have that. A lot more trade during the Hellenistic world than the Greek world, the Hellenic world. Another interesting thing is as a result of that, a whole new flourishing of math and science and medicine. I believe one of your IDs on your review sheet is Hellenistic science and medicine. Be careful on that one. That previous lecture we did was on the Greek scientists and the Greek mathematicians. That's not what I'm looking for in that ID. On that ID, I'm looking for Hellenistic science and medicine, which is information in your textbook. In your textbook, if you notice, you looked at that review sheet for your midterm, some of the keywords in the midterm, some of those IDs you need to know, I didn't lecture on. They're not going to be in the lecture, but they are going to be in your textbook. So just kind of keep that in mind. Anyway, so you have that. What else? So, those are some of the big things. Oh, another development is a whole new language called Koine that's going to develop, a whole new language that Alexander's legacy's gonna create because you needed a language to bond everyone together. So you have that as well in the period of time of Alexander. Language shows you how important it is when you need a whole new language to bond people because of his legacy. He conquered so much land so quickly and able for people to communicate. So those are some of the big things Alexander leaves. So yes, nothing is held for a long term, but in terms of his conquest, it still does pretty much end the Greek world and really also sets the foundations for the next civilization we're going to talk about, and that's going to, of course, be the story of ancient Rome. And so we are now done with the Macedonian kingdom. Again, there isn't that much on it, just one little civilization. We just focused on Philip and Alexander. And then we kind of move from there to talk about Rome, which we'll spend a lot of time on. And so be ready for that in our next lectures. Thank you.